Hello and welcome to Mastering Made Easy, bringing you another tutorial. This time what we're going to be having a look at is the initial screens within Cubase 11 Pro. It's going to be the same for any versions of Cubase that you're using basically, and for any other DAWs. They're all going to have similar kind of functionality, so just bear that in mind. The aim of my tutorials is to get you up and running as quickly as possible and without blinding you with science. So I won't go into too much detail because what I want you to do is basically get up and running and then get on with the creative side of actually recording some music. So this is the initial screen that you'll come to within Cubase. On this left hand side what you'll get is a list of any tutorials that they've got or any updates that are due, such as this one, Cubase 11.20 maintenance update. What you've got across the top here is your most recent projects. There's only one in here. If you want to get rid of that particular project because you're not using it anymore, all you do is just right click and then click on remove from list, and that'll get rid of it. You've got various templates that are in here. One's for recording, one's for scoring, one for production, and one's for mastering. I don't tend to use any of these. I'm going to show you how to set up some really good mastering and mixing and production templates so that you can use them with ease. From a mastering perspective, obviously if you are producing music, the best way to do that is to export the audio files and send them to an external mastering engineer such as masteringmadeeasy.com. That way you're going to get a fresh set of ears on your music, and they're going to optimize it as well for radio ready types of things, or for uploads to the likes of BBC introducing platform. Also, you've got the more section here which has an empty template. So in here what we'll get is, once we start creating our own templates, we'll get our templates coming within here. Down at the bottom you've got it will default to use the default location, and in here this is where you basically set up your folder structure. So the way that I like to do it is, if we click on this little folder icon here, it'll bring up a structure. Mine are in this particular laptop that I'm using for these tutorials are on my desktop. I have it set up slightly different for my main PC that I use for my mixing and mastering side of things. But within here you'll see that I've got a number of folders. I like to number my folders in the priority that I'm going to be using them. So 01 is going to be my Cubase projects. If I click into that particular folder, you'll see that I've got one folder in here. The way that Cubase sets up these folders is that you'll have the audio track and you'll have the track pictures, etc. within there. You'd also sometimes have mix down folders within there as well, depending on what version you're using. I've got an export folder as well. I use that for when I'm exporting my projects, and we'll go into that in some later tutorials in a bit more detail. And then I've got my Cubase masters as well. So if I decide to do my mixing within the box within Cubase, I would probably put those in there. Again, if you send your masters, your pre-masters I should say, once you've done your mixing, off to masteringmadeeasy.com, then you know, the ones that I will send back to you, which will be in a WAV format and an MP3 format, you could perhaps load into here for future reference. I then have my other folders, so that's just basically any stuff that I want to deal with personally, and then I have my Snagit videos as well in here for when I'm doing tutorials, that kind of thing. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to show you this basic structure. So it will, if I use the default location, it will default through to my 01 Cubase projects, which is what I want it to do. What I'm going to do is create a new one. So we click into here, we name the project. So let's just call this our first song. And what I always do at the end of that is I put an underscore and then I put the date in reverse format, so that when you look in your folders they will come through in a nice orderly fashion. So I'm going to put the month in there as well, and then the date, which is going to be the 16th. The next thing that I do is I highlight all of that. I do Control C on my keyboard. That's on my laptop keyboard. And then what I do is I click on create empty, and that will bring up this folder. Sorry, this will bring up the project then with my actual track titles in here and everything. So then the next thing I do is I go to file and I'll go to save. When it brings up this box, I click into here where it's got the file name, and I just do Control V, which is what I've just copied from the initial setup. So now this song structure matches in with my Cubase project folder. I then click on save. Okay, so once we're up and running on here, you can see now that this says now first song 2021 06 16. Okay, so we've got all that information up there. Just to run through a few bits on the top here, if you go to the studio, you've got your audio connections here, so you can see all your inputs and your outputs. Now, in this particular example, for these tutorials, I'm using an RME Babyface Pro. So obviously with that particular one, it only has a couple of analog ins and outs, which is what you're going to see here. When I'm in my main studio, I either use my RME audio UFX2 or my RME audio 802. I'm a big lover of all the RME products. They're absolutely fantastic. Even with the older products, they give you all the latest drivers, they keep you up to date, and it's money well spent. I know they're a little bit dearer than everything else out there, but the quality is so much better. With regards to group effects, you can add other info in here, and if you've got any outboard equipment, you know, such as compressors or EQs that you can add those in here as well. And same with external instruments. We'll bring these to you in a later tutorial, and then you've also got the control room, which again we'll come to in a later tutorial. But for the moment, all that you're going to be interested in is the inputs and the outputs. If you are doing any tracks and you need a mono track, when it initially sets it up, it will just default it through as a stereo in. If we click on add bus, then what we can do is we can change the configuration here to mono, and then what we can do is just add bus here, and then you can see that it's put in these different analogs here. So we could potentially change this to analog 1 if we wanted to, and that means then that we've got a stereo input, and then we've got also an analog input. And again, if you want to create another one, so that, let's say for instance you are recording your vocals in this track and then you want to record guitar through another, what we can do is we can add another bus in here, and then we could change that to analog 2. So they're now named as this, but what you could always do is just overtype them and put vocal in there, and perhaps RME, so that you know exactly what it is that you've done. And then if you want to have the other input as the guitar, you could put guitar and again RME there, just so that you know. We can leave this one as stereo, so that we know that if we're using it for any stereo type of equipment, we've got that output, that input I should say. And then we've got our input, which we can just leave as is. We'll just close that down. And again, as I do things, I just like to save on a regular basis, just in case your CPU, if you're on I'm on a laptop here, so it's not quite the same as working in the studio on my big beast of an audio PC. So there are a few limitations with it, even though this one's got like 32 gig of RAM on it, and it's really good quality. But what we're going to do next is we're going to add a instrument track, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add Groove Agent SE in here. So if you click on the drop down, you can see that it defaults through all the instruments that you've got in here. I've not got a whole host of items on here because it is just a laptop, so my space is limited to 1 terabyte, and I know that probably seems a lot, but believe you me, it soon goes quickly. So then what we'll do is we'll click on add track. That will then bring up the Groove Agent SE, and if you've not got a keyboard, for instance, you can play back from here by clicking on here, and it'll add a keyboard in down at the bottom. I'm not going to use that. and then if you click on here, this will give you all the folder structure for all the different kits, where you can choose the different styles that you want down here. You can choose the sub styles, and then also you've got your signature timings as well, which are just here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to choose a basic rock one, and we'll just go for bourbon. Double click it, and then basically what you can do is you've got all the pads laid out here, but for ease of practice, if you're a newcomer, just click on pattern, move this across to the side, and then if you click on these, you can audition the different pads, kick on its own, etc., hi-hats. So what we'll do is we'll just take this this groove 02. All you do, click on it and drag it across, and it'll just drop it into here. You can move it around if you want to. If it's not dropped in the right, say you dropped it here, you can just drag it across into this location. If you want to repeat that, because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close this down now so we can just see the full screen. If you want to repeat this, all you do is click on it so it's highlighted. Again, with here, if we just go to control, I'm clicking on the actual MIDI file here, and I'm just doing control and the letter D on my keyboard. You can see it just moves them across. If I then want to select all of those, I just highlight all of them, I press the letter P on my keyboard, and then that then puts the loop facility around it. I can click on here and then play back, and it'll just continue to loop round, which makes it really easy when you're writing your song. Now I'm just going to work on this particular one, so again I've just clicked on it, press P, and as you can see it's now reduced it down to this 4-bar measure that I'm working on. What I'm going to do, again, file and save, which I like to do on a regular basis. Right click, add a track, and this time I'm going to add another instrument track, but this time I'm going to add in complete control. I click on add. That will bring up complete control, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the sorry, it brings up advertising as well. I'm going to close that down. I'm going to choose this electric guitar simulator, and I'm going to choose California. So what I've done is here I've just basically double clicked on it. So California is basically where it's got when you click on here, it basically pulls in all of the different loop categories that you can play back. That will be set out on your keyboard. I'm using for these tutorials a little complete Native Instruments complete M32, but I have the full-blown S88 Mark II in the main studio, which I use for when I'm doing my actual recordings. The melody one, when you see the name duplicated but it's got melody in brackets, it's just when you're wanting to play back freestyle. So in other words, if you were picking on an electric guitar or an acoustic guitar. So once we've done that, what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to basically set this back to the beginning, and I'm just going to click on record, and then I'm going to start playing the actual keyboard to get a loop going. It'll give you 2-bar counting as well. So then what you can do is click onto the track, press Q on your keyboard, which will then quantize it. Just a couple of things to go through at the top here as well. If you want to make any adjustments, what you can do is it's set at the top here to bar, which means that basically as you click any of these segments, they will snap to bar. But you can change it to beat, which then gives you a little bit more room to move around in smaller measures. Okay, and then you've got quantize, which allows you for really fine tuning. So you can see that I can move that round, and if the fine tuning isn't enough, because this is set to 1/16, you can click down here and change it to, you know, 1/128th, 1/64th, or 1/32nd, It's really straightforward. I tend to like to work in bar and beat because it gives you a nice tight groove then, and then when I'm doing things like, for instance, my guitar leads, etc., then I will move across to quantize so that I can get more detail in there. Again, all as I've done here is basically just done this loop. If I want to play a different loop onto the second one, so for instance, if we move to here and press the letter P on my keyboard, all as I do then is just click here at the top, and it'll bring the bar back to the beginning. Click on here. So then what I've done there is I've basically done another loop, press Q again just to get it all tightened up, and then if we play it back from the beginning, what we're going to get is something slightly different. So like that, we'll move to here, press P, bring it back to the beginning, click on the record, get the 2-bar intro, and do another one. So what you can see here is I clicked just before the 2-bar intro started. So what it's happened is it's actually made the MIDI loop over. So if I move that back to here, I can do a double click on here just to see what it looks like. So I'm going to just press P so I can see where it is. And yeah, that's not coming. Sometimes your loop will come over like this, which is another cause of the extension on the bar. So just going to move that back to there. This here is the show and hide the lower zone, so I can get rid of that by just clicking here. Click back onto this one, press P, make sure we're in it, look at it, double click it, and you can see that looks okay. If you want to look at it in a larger view, click on this little arrow here and it will open it in a separate window so you can see it a little bit clearer. I'm just going to click onto it, press Q to make sure it's quantized, and then just drag that to the end so it's all nice and tight. Again, click on here to get rid of it, and just click on that X, which is the lower one in the window. Be careful that you don't close your project down in full. And then going to click on there just so that we're back to it, and then again file and save. Again, with regards to the auto scroll, this is interesting here. So if this is on orange, it means that the auto scroll isn't on. So again, make sure that this is highlighted, because then if you're going across a full song, let's say 3 minutes long, what it'll do is it'll move it along. So I'll just show you. So if we do highlight that lot, do Control D, we can see that we can make our song longer. Yeah. Okay, and then we can move these around in whatever shape we want as we start adding things like vocals in, etc. So we'll just bring that back to the beginning. I'll do file and save again, and then I'll start playing. Now, I'll just remove the cycle so that it'll go straight past. And I've deactivated the auto scroll at the moment. Now watch as it goes off the screen. You can't see the playback any longer. So if I click on auto scroll, now it'll bring it back to that particular bar. So as you can see on this, what we've done is we've got a slight problem with this one here. It's not recognizing it. So what we'll do is we will delete it. We'll click on here, and what we'll do is we'll delete all of these as well. So, because we want to play it back. So all you're doing is highlighting them, pressing delete on your keyboard, bring it back to the beginning, click on here where we want to do the recording from. We're going to then put the loop facility on, click it back to here, get our counting, and then press the keyboard again. So what I did was I pressed this just to show you a bit of a mess up on it, basically. So if I double click there, let's just drag this across to here. If I double click on here, you can see that I started it and then I finished it. So what we'll do is we'll delete that first intro bit, we don't need that. And then we'll take this main bar, and then what we'll do is we'll drag that across to the beginning, and drag that across to here. And that'll give us a nice tight bar. Press Q on it again, just make sure it's quantized. And then hopefully this will work now when we play it back. So we know that that group's okay. So what we'll do is we'll highlight it, we'll highlight all of those, and then do Control D and then move it across. So now we've got the basic structure of a song. We'll go File and Save. And then the next thing we need is we're going to add an audio track. So what we do is we click on here, we go Add Audio. And what you do in here is just basically type the name in. So I'm going to just put vocals. And we click Add Track. And while we're at it, we'll add another one in there. And we're going to go Add Track, Audio Track. And we'll call this one Guitar. And we'll call that Guitar Lead. I've just noticed one thing on here. I forgot to mention about the configuration. So what we'll do is we'll delete that track. So it's really straightforward. All you do is you right click on it, you go Remove Selected Track, then right click on here again, go Add Track, we'll go Add Audio Track, and this is the key bit, configuration. We want a mono track because we're doing a vocal. And we're using input 1 on the RME Babyface Pro. It'll be the same with any audio interface that you're using. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to click in here and write in vocal. Click on Add Track. If we just click on here and have a look over to the side, you can see that it's put vocal RME, which is what we set up initially when we went into Studio and Audio Connections. So on the input side here, remember we created analog 1 was the analog input 1 that we were going to use for the vocals. And on the next one, what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to add an audio track. And this time we still want mono. And what we're going to do here is just put Guitar Lead. And then click on Add Track. And then let's just check the configuration over here. So you can see what it's done is it's basically put it through to the vocal, which will be no good because we're going to be using a high Z input functionality on there. So what we need is the guitar RME one, which, because we're using the vocals on one and I'm using a condenser microphone, we're going to have to enable the 48 button on the audio interface so that it actually picks up the vocals. But if we're using a guitar lead on the other one, then obviously the 48 isn't going to be correct because we want to be using the high Z function. So what I'm going to do now is just click on File and Save, and that's the basics that we've got ready to record. Now, when you're recording vocals, easiest way to do it is let your intro go, click on the section where you want to start your vocals, press P. Now, rather than doing the full song, it's nice to sing in a 4-bar basis, really, because that way you can sing the track over and over again. It's the way that, you know, like for instance, Bono out of U2 does a lot of his vocals this particular way, because he can just keep singing the same section over and over again until he gets a good feel for it. What you do is you can show the lanes. So what will happen is, as we start recording, it'll put multiple lanes in here. So what you do is you enable this, and now you can hear my vocal coming through again. There's some latency on here, so I'll just unswitch that. But that is how you would start recording the vocals. You do the record button here, and then once you start doing that, you'll get your 2-bar intro like we've got here. As we start recording, you can see the vocals are now coming through. And you can see the vocals here. So if I click back here and then click on play. As we start recording, you can see the vocals are now coming through. So that's the recording of my vocals coming through. But obviously we don't need those, so all we do is hit them, click on delete, and that's how you record your vocals. So make sure to enable the monitor button, make sure that you enable this, and then as they come through, then if you like the vocals and you like the first section, the second section, etc. So let's just record something on here. When I say to you what you want to do. So if we were to record that over and over again, what would happen is it would look something like so it looks something like this, and what you can do is you can basically use the scissor functionality here to cut it. So if there's certain parts of the vocals you like, and don't forget we're currently set to bar, so it's snapping to bar, you can set it to beat, so then you can go finer tuning, and you can also set it to quantize to get the very fine tuning on it. Okay, but basically what you do is you would cut down on the different sections like this, and say, for instance, that you play it back and you don't like this particular bit, you can move that, but you like this bit, you can drag that down into there. You don't like the end bit, you can delete that, but you like the end bit on this one, you can drag that down into there. Then what you do is basically just get rid of your other ones by clicking delete, drag this bit up to the top here, and then you've got your vocal ready. So what I've just done there is known as vocal comping, if you ever see that reference coming up, and then we click on play. When I say to you what you want to do, and then final bit with regards to the vocals here, what you might want to do is add in some plugins so that you can get some kind of studio kind of feel to it. So if we click on this is a Waves one that I'm going to use here, which is voice centric. There are some presets on here, so I'm going to go for the collar grab vocals and click playback. When I say to you, so it's going red here. Just going to bring that down slightly. So it's not clipping. What you want to do. So I can add more delay. When I say to you, more reverb. What you want to do. When I say to you, what you want to do. When I say to you. Okay, so that'll give us the basics for our song, and then we'll move on and progress it a little bit further in the next video. Okay, so thanks for watching, and don't forget to tune in for the second part, and we'll basically build this song up until we've got a full song in here. And then what we'll do is we'll go to the mixing stage, and then finally we'll do the mastering stage, and then we'll show you how to export it and how to upload it to the likes of BBC Introducing, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, or any of them. Okay, thank you very much.